In this video, I'm going to show you how to just create one of your own regular template classes. Now, this is different than the classes that we have created previously in that this isn't going to have a main method. And what this is this is my modification of the book's die class. We're representing a single die. Remember, die is the singular of dice. So we have the die class. And if you remember that we had a class variable called max, and that was 6. And then for class variables, public, static, we want to make that final. Okay, what final does is that means that max is going to be 6 and it can't be changed unless we come in and edit the code. So, and it's okay to make these static ones public because of that, because nobody can change it. Now, instance variables are another matter. They must be declared private, not public. So there was one called face value. Okay, and that's how we define that. Okay, so we have defined the class variables, the instance variables. Now next we're going to do the constructor. Okay, so now constructors, like methods, can have arguments. In this particular case, we're not going to give it an argument, but we are going to set the face value initially to 1. Okay, why 1? Why not? It can be perfectly arbitrary. Now the other instance variable this is a little bit different from the book, is creating an instance variable called random. Again, we get the red squiggly, import the random. And now as an object, this we will oops, random. Now notice that I'm referring to the instance variables using this. That isn't completely necessary. Okay, so we can leave that out, but we'll circle back to that. Okay, that's the constructor. Now there are 3 methods, instance methods, that we are going to implement. Okay, one is the getter for face value. The book has a setter, but that is actually not a great idea, because if we're randomly rolling a die and you have a public setter method, or what the book calls a mutator, that means that if you're basically conveying that if you don't like the value that got randomly rolled, then you can just set it to something else. And if you're playing a game like that, then that's not the best idea in the world. So now these setters and getters, or mutator and accessor, the way the book calls them, we can generate those automatically. And how do we do that? We select our variable, we right-click on it, and we choose Refactor Encapsulate Fields. And that will bring up a dial. It lists all of the possible values, variables we have. So we have one for max. There's no point in having it for max, because that's something that just can be gotten. There's no point in having it for random, because random is purely an internal one. But again, now if we didn't do anything, it would create this setter for us, and we don't want that. And the insert point, let's put it after die, right after die. Okay, so we have a getter, but no setter. Just as we create default comments, its field is going to be private, but the accessor is going to be public, and we refactor. And that is created our method. So, so you may be under the impression that we have to do a lot of typing for this, but we really just have to do a little bit of clicking. All right, the final, well, now, see, now at this point, we actually have enough to start running. And again, remember what I was saying about how we it's best to just write a little bit of code and then sort of test it. So we're not finished with this class yet, but we have enough so that we can actually create something. So let's I'll call this rolling die or rolling dice, because we're going to eventually have two. Okay, so what I have enough here to declare one. And again, okay, now notice you may be a little confused by this, because we're in a sub-package of CS2173, but it still can't find the die class. So we do have to import it. Okay, so let's see what we get here. Well, now we get a bunch of gobbledygook if we just kind of print it out. But what we can do is we can print our getter on that. And that will give us a 1, which is what we were expecting. Okay, so so we've checked that off. And the next, okay, now we have a method called roll. And what roll is going to do is roll is going to randomly generate a new face value. And how do we do that? Random next int. Now our bound is going to be our max. And since max is equal to 6, this will give us 0 through 5, which is not what we want, and so we have to add 1 to that. And then we simply return face value. That's okay. So let's check that out here. And roll it and print it out. So I don't know what I'm going to get for the second one. I should still get the 1 for the first one. But in this case, I got 2. So if I run it again, I'll probably get, okay, I got 3. No. Now, is it going to go 2, 3, 4? No, it's 1 again. So each time I run it, I'm going to get a different value. All right, so that kind of checks out. And the final piece on this is overriding the toString method. Now the toString method, all we're going to do is we're just going to return the face value. And now here's the problem, is that toString is a method that needs a string, and if we just return face value, it doesn't let us, and the error says exactly what the problem is. Incompatible types, int cannot be converted to string. Now there are a couple ways that we can we can fix this, but one is a class method in the wrapper class integer called toString. So integer toString, that's not the same as, that's not the same as this toString, and these are semantically very different. Say this toString is an instance method. This one is a class method because we're invoking it from integer. Now notice we get a little light bulb here. Whenever we get a light bulb, it is kind of a useful thing to say add an override. So what that means is that this toString method has overridden something in the superclass. Later in the course, we'll talk about what overriding is all about. And now what we can do is we can test this out by replacing these with just, when we print the object now, the toString will now return what the value is instead of the gobbledygook that it had before. Okay, so now the only thing left to do, we have another little light bulb here. It says random can be final. In this case, that's actually a good idea. So we're going to make that final. We'll agree to that and just make sure that that didn't break anything. But now we want to just kind of do a little bit more of a test. So let's see what we have here. So these were kind of testing this, and what I want to do is I want to make 2 of these, and then have a sum that's going to be the sum of the 2. Okay, so now what I'm going to roll the first one, roll the second one, oops, die, roll, and then sum is going to be equal to, now we need the integers. Okay, so if I tried to do the toString one, then that would not work. So what are you complaining about here? It's never read. Well, we're just about to. So let's see what we got here. So the first roll is going to be, okay, let's give it a new line. So our die1 is going to be this integer here. Die2, 2 is going to be the next integer. And then we want and then the sum. And a new line. So now because, oops. So the first one, the second one, and then finally the sum. Okay. Okay, so for the first row, we got a 6 and a 6, so the sum was 12. Okay, now let's just to show, let's do the whole thing all over again. And we do it twice. Okay, so for the first row, we got a 2 and a 2. The sum is 4. Okay, and then for the second, get 5, die 1, get face value, die 2. I want to make sure that we're not, okay, we're getting identical values here, which is not ideal, but is it just by chance? Okay, so here we have a 3 and a 2, the sum is 5, so that's, again, we just need to be mindful of the fact that we may have messed things up. How could we have messed things up? Well, I could have maybe had both of the same things here. Okay, so now all that's left to do, of course, is to put comments in our various files, but this is how you create a class and then test it.